Good morning, everybody. We are going to get started here in just a minute, give folks a chance to get online and hopefully get connected. If you are joining us this morning, glad you're with us. This is not taking the place of the Acts 13 missional community tonight, but this is a time that I'm kind of specifically doing for Peace Presbyterian in Flint, and so each Sunday morning we're gonna go live for a few minutes and spend some time looking at the scriptures together during this little stay-at-home order or what have you. So we are hanging in. I hope everybody else out there is hanging in. You can see my fancy hat because the quarantine hair is a significant issue these days. There's just nothing I can do about it, and have yet to find a black market barber, which probably isn't the best idea anyway, right? Because we are to be staying home and staying safe, and so I hope all of you are doing that as well. We are beginning a new series here, the Acts 13 Network, this week, called Songs and Sayings, Words for the Journey. As we go through our lives, as we walk through this journey that we are all on, we tend to need two things. We need songs, and we need wisdom. And the scriptures, they give us both, right? They give us songs and words of wisdom. And the songs are called Psalms, and the wisdom is called Proverbs, and we have both of those sitting before us in our scriptures. And so, over the next number of weeks, we are going to walk through a variety of Psalms. We're going to walk through a number of Proverbs, and hopefully, this will add to the color of our journey that we're walking through. The scriptures speak to both head and heart. And so we need both song and wisdom, right? We need songs and sayings. We need them both because they hit us somewhere in different places. The songs, the music of our family, of our heritage, of our faith, hits us in our heart. And the wisdom, which is, knowledge applied, hits our head. And both help us to live this life in a more color-rich kind of way, right? Where we're able to go through this world, not just looking for black and white, but we're able to see the whole spectrum of the world and of this life. So we are starting this morning in Psalms chapter 1. So Psalm 1, the first song. And this first psalm, really the first two psalms, Psalm 1 and Psalm 2, they kind of set the stage for the whole songbook. Because that's really what the book of Psalms is. It's our family hymnal, basically, right? And so these first two psalms, they set the stage. Psalm 1 is about the individual, and then Psalm 2 is about the corporate. It's about the nations, and we'll get to Psalm 2 in a couple of weeks. But Psalm 1 goes like this: Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers. but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Not so the wicked. They are like chaff in the wind that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked leads to destruction. So, this is the song that really sets the stage for the whole thing. Like any good album, right? I love albums that tell a story. I love it when you can listen to the first song on an album and it takes you somewhere as you listen to it, and you're not left in the same place as you were at the beginning. So this psalm sets that stage, and what it does is it points us to two kinds of people, right? And it's separated into two parts. Verses 1 through 3 describe one kind of person. Verses 4 and 5 describe the second kind of person, and verse 6 is kind of the summary here. And it's hard. Working through the Psalms is difficult because they're not like letters. They're not like Paul writing to Romans or the Thessalonians or something along those lines. They're not even like the Gospels. History. That's not what we see here. What we have here is poetry, imagery, metaphor, art. That's what's happening here in Psalm chapter 1. And so we have to be careful, right? We don't want to overstate what is happening here in Psalm 1. We don't want to overstate anything that we read in the Psalms. We also don't want to understate them. We want to understand that this is poetry. These are songs. These are meant to evoke powerful emotions in us. Now, some of you may have grown up like I did as I started getting serious about my faith in college, in the kind of evangelical subculture where heart, emotion, feelings are things that are all set aside, things that are not of value, things that are less than important. Well, the scriptures say that no, our feelings, our emotions, the heart is important and does have great value, and God does care about how we feel and where our feeling comes from. And so these psalms, these songs, they evoke those emotions in us. And so Psalm 1, we have two big images. We really have the image of being rooted and the image of being blown away. And so let's take a look at this. First, you have the blessed man, the blessed one. Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. This rooted person, this person who is rooted like a tree planted by streams of water, right? It's a tree that is plenty of water, plenty of sun, plenty of what it needs to bear fruit in season, out of season. It never withers, the psalmist says. But what we see is we see a couple of things here about this person. We see some things that they don't do, and we see some things that they do. The first is hey, this is what the rooted person does not do. The person who is rooted in their union with God doesn't do this. They don't walk with the wicked, they don't stand with the sinners, and they don't sit with the mockers. So they have these three things, right? These three images: walk, stand, sit. And you can kind of trace this if you watch any any TV show where you have, bad guys, right? Like generational bad guys. Maybe even think of, something along the lines of any of the mob movies, right? And what do you have? You have the kind of have the the soldiers who are out there in the gangs, and they are doing the stuff. They're the ones that are walking, right? They're the walking wicked. And then you kind of have that next level up, maybe the right hand man to the Don or the Godfather. He just stands there. He's standing in the presence of the Godfather and is kind of saying, "Hey, let's do this, let's do that." And then you have the Godfather who's sitting and just kind of is mocking the whole justice department, right? All of the cops. He just kind of sits there and mocks, and you can kind of see this progression, and we have this progression, in people's lives. You know those people. You know those people who started their life and they were doing all the bad stuff, and then they kind of slow down a little bit, and they kind of direct. They kind of direct things, and then eventually they just sit and scoff. They sit and mock, and so the person who is rooted in union with God doesn't walk, stand, or sit in these ways. No, they're doing something else. They're bringing good fruit into this world, and that good fruit, I think, is most clearly described in Galatians chapter 5, right? The fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Those kinds of things. This is the good fruit, and it is a fruit that never goes out of season. And this fruit is what is developed in us when we hang in there, when we do something. And what is it that we do? Well, the person who is blessed, the person who is rooted, delights in God's law, meditates on God's law. And the law here can be very easily just understood as God's words to the people. The person who is rooted in their faith, delights in God's words, meditates on God's words, is spending their time thinking, processing, chewing, right? This whole idea of delighting and meditating can be used as another word picture that Eugene Peterson uses. And he talks about how he was sitting one day on his back porch watching his dog gnawing a bone, and just kind of that joyful sound that the dog made. This is kind of the imagery here, this happiness, this joy that comes from turning over God's words in our mind and our heart, and meditating and processing on them, and delighting in God's words. And so the question for us is, if we want to be rooted next to that stream where we have good fruit, what do? We meditate on God's words. We meditate on what it is that God is teaching us and telling us. Now, you get into John chapter 1, and it's interesting because he says that the Logos, the Word, has moved into the neighborhood, has taken on flesh. And so while we have the Scriptures and while we have God's Word, the other thing that we have to be aware of is that we need to delight and meditate on living this life well in this world. So it's not just some academic exercise. If meditating and delighting in God's Word does not push us into bearing fruit, into living lives that are described by the fruit of the Spirit that we see in Galatians chapter 5, then we have to ask ourselves, what are we doing? Are we really rooted next to that stream that bears good fruit in every season? And I think what this does is this challenges us. It challenges us to ask this question: do we believe that we can make our own blessing? Do we believe that we can make our own blessing? I think so many people think that that's the case, that somehow, some way, we make our own blessing. But blessing is not something that we make, that we create. No, blessing comes from the Lord watching over us. Look at verse 6, right? For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous. This is where blessing comes from. You don't make it yourself. You receive it. It is grace. Blessing is ultimately grace. It is rooted there. Now, if we're not rooted, what's the other option? The other option, the other kind of person he describes is the wicked, right? It says in verse 4, not so the wicked, they are like chaff, and that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. Chaff, I have these beautiful, I don't know what they're called. I don't know what kind of plant they are because I've got a black thumb, but I've got these beautiful bush flower things on the side of my house, and when they flower, they're like these giant snowballs of flowers, and they are absolutely beautiful, and they're beautiful for a very short time, and then they dry out and they blow away. Chaff. You see, the one who does not delight in the law, does not meditate on God's words, they are like chaff, and the wind blows them away. They're here today, gone tomorrow. Their successes, while they seem amazing in the moment, they're nothing more than a flash in the pan. They simply fade, and soon nobody talks about them anymore. Nobody thinks much about them anymore. And think about these guys from history, right? A lot of people still think about Mother Teresa or Gandhi, Martin Luther King Jr. How many people really talk and think about the Rockefellers? Nobody. They're not. They were rich. They did some good stuff. But their names are not on the tip of our tongue. I don't know if they were good people or bad people, but the point here is that sometimes in this world, what looks like success, wealth, fame, having everything that the world offers, seems like blessing. Whereas you have other people like Mother Teresa or Gandhi who live poor lives, who don't have everything that the world offers, choose to go a different way. Seems like they're not blessed. But in the long run, blessing is theirs because they're the ones that are remembered. They're the ones whose fruit continues to hang in there and shows that everything that they did prospered. So, my challenge for you this week is to root yourself in righteousness. And how do you do that? Do that by meditating on God's words and doing and living the things that will last a lifetime. And really what that is that's investing in relationships. It's investing your life in people and caring and loving well. All right, next week we will be in Proverbs chapter 1. So I hope that you will join us then. You can encourage you to follow me on Twitter at Daniel M. Rose, or also subscribe to my blog and podcast if you want some other stuff throughout the week. You can do so at danielmrose.com. And just subscribe there, drop your email address, and it comes right in your inbox. But again, I hope you guys are doing well, and I will see you next week.